and welcome to Find It. So excited. I always am because I have amazing guests. That's why. But tonight I have Steve Stivers, who was a military man, once in the military, always in the military is what I say. Thank you for your service. And he was our Ohio State representative and now the CEO of the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. He has a lot to talk about. He's a wealth of wisdom. Super fun always to have him with us tonight. So let's show his intro and he will be right back with us. Welcome, Steve Stivers, to the show.
It's great to be on, Debbie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you bet. We've known each other for quite a while. And if you want to tell our viewers how we met, if you remember.
Well, you were working for Keys to Success and a program that helps make sure teens don't fall into the problem of drugs and opioids, and an incredible program. And I met you first in Washington, D.C., then I came to Chillicothe to one of your events for Keys to Success. And, I met a young lady at that event that went on to intern in my office for a year, I guess. And she didn't intern. She was, I think, a freshman in high school when I met her. She interned for me when she was in college. But it's been a great opportunity to meet you and all the things you've done to keep kids safe and away from drugs. And I really love what you're doing now with your podcast and everything. And it's an honor to be on.
No, it's such an honor for you to be here. But I wanted to show everybody. So the first time we met was this day. That is when we were in Washington, D.C. to talk to you about the Keys to Success program. That's Gary Von Kennel, Officer Julie Preston, and myself with you. And I remember all of us, after we left from that meeting, said, he is a great guy. And do you remember we were selling those plaques that had Keys to Success on it? And you're like, well, I'll buy one. And you put it right on your wall. And we're like, oh my gosh, is he the best?
I still wear the Keys to Success t-shirt you guys gave me when I came down to Chillicothe. It was great.
Exactly. Bob Donnell is from the LA area. Amazing man. And he's saying, thank you for your service. Julie Preston, who was in the picture, she said it was a great trip. It certainly was. Julie, thanks for watching. The t-shirt you're talking about, I'm wearing it right here. That's when you came to the school. So there's a lot of things that you did. I have so much respect for you, Steve. You've been in the military, you've done so many amazing things, but you're also a person for the people. And you are so down to earth and so giving of your time, which I know you were incredibly busy. Thanks, Sean Benson piped in and said, great program. But I'm just really grateful to even know you. And now I'm super pumped that you're on the show. But let's get more onto you as the man. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and how you grew up.
Well, Debbie, I grew up in a little town called Ripley, Ohio, in Brown County, right on the river. It's a town that's known for its abolitionist history. It has a place called the Rankin House that helped a lot of former slaves to freedom. And in fact, if you ever read the movie or read the book Uncle Tom's Cabin, where Liza crossed the river was into Ripley for the Rankin House. So it was a very inspiring town. It's the same town that Ulysses S. Grant graduated from high school in. And a town that everybody knows everything about you. It's a town of 2,500 people. So that kind of moderates your behavior a little bit. You can't get too wild. Growing up, I played sports. I played baseball. I played a little bit of basketball. I ran track and cross country. I was also in Boy Scouts. I became an Eagle Scout. And all those things really impacted me. Sports taught me teamwork. The Boy Scouts taught me that you can really serve people and make a difference. And I think that's what inspired me to later join the military. So that was
going to be my question. Do you have siblings?
I do have a twin brother. He is a union iron worker in Cincinnati. And I have a sister that's a couple of years older, and she still lives in the town we grew up in, Ripley, Ohio. And my
Wow.
mom is still alive in Ripley. My dad unfortunately passed away in 2003, but and he had a blood clot and was taking Coumadin, and at one point thought maybe he could take an aspirin a day, and none of us knew it. And that led to a stroke. And unfortunately, he didn't. He pulled out that day, but it really changed his life, and he lived in a nursing home for a few years and then passed away. So,
Right.
but my dad was a banker. My mom was a kindergarten teacher. And, in our little town, again, everybody knows everything about you. And I started my first job when I was 14 years old. The thing that I learned in my first job is you've got to stick with it. I did that job from the age of 14 all the way until the day I left for college, and stuck with it that long. And that's been my track record. I generally stick with things a long time and try to give it my all. I really learned that, from my very first job. I went to the Ohio State University and joined the Ohio National Guard to help pay for college. And Ohio State was a great place where I learned incredible things and made lifelong friends. Was in a fraternity, Delta Upsilon, where I made a lot of my friends. I also, made friends from class and other endeavors. I was on the speech and debate team at Ohio State for a little while and made some good friends there. So that was 6 of the best years of my life. College should always be a good time, and it was for me, unfortunately, but took a little longer than it probably should have, but it was a great time.
But that's okay. You stuck with it. And just in light of what you said earlier, you stick with things for a long time. So leaving college in 4 years would be unlike you,
There
Steve.
you go. That's a fair point.
But what do you think? Why do you have such the work ethic from such a young age, do you feel?
That was probably instilled in me by my mom and dad, that if you want to be successful, you got to work hard. And, both my mom and dad worked really hard, and then they volunteered for the community. And my dad was in Kiwanis. My mom was on city council. My dad at one point was on the utility board in our town of Ripley. So they not only worked during the day, but volunteered and gave back to the community at night. And I think that's one of the things that's led me mostly to a life of service. While I spent about 14 years in the private sector, I've been in the military now 37 years. I'm still serving in the Ohio National Guard as a major general. And
Wow.
in fact, still doing a lot with the National Guard, which is great. It's been a really long career. I'm probably, within a year of hanging that up, but it's been a great run. And I've been able to do a lot of incredible things and meet a lot of amazing people that changed my life. And I'll tell you, the thing I learned from the military is leadership. And, if I learned commitment and service from the Boy Scouts and from my parents, I definitely learned leadership from the military. And that, when people are trusting you with their lives, you've got to take care of them and do the right things. And, leaders have to make sure that their troops are properly equipped and properly trained. And leaders need to make sure that all the folks on the team understand the plan and can execute the plan if other people somehow are missing or the leader comes up missing, and understand the commander's intent. I think everything I do to this day with regard to leadership is stuff that I learned in the military, and that's where I found my leadership experience. And I'm still living that today, but it's impacted the rest of my life. And I think without it, I wouldn't have been served in Congress. I probably wouldn't be the CEO of the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. I would have probably taken a different path if I hadn't had that leadership training in the military. It's been very impactful on my life. And I like to hope that I've made a little bit of a difference, both in my military service and in my other service. But, the military training has really been something that has impacted my life in a massive way.
That's incredible. And do you feel like because you had those leadership skills kind of building in you from the way you're raised, but you feel like even more so it was the military helped you tune those up and really instill that leadership. And so when you're talking to kids, now college age or younger in high school, would you give them that advice
I
to
would
join
tell
the military?
everybody serving in the military is an incredible experience. Even if you serve at the lowest level, I enlisted, as a private, and ended up, now I'm a major general. So I've had a chance to rise through the ranks. Went to officer candidate school. I didn't go to ROTC or West Point, the service academy. I actually went through officer candidate school and as an enlisted person, and got my commission that way. So it's been a great experience. And the military, I think, gives amazing training and experience and a chance to see the world.
Yes, I agree. And Bob Donnell is saying, thank you for being willing to lead. That's a really good point, because that's a ton of responsibility. Leading, because ultimately things come down on you if things aren't going correctly. And so that's true. It's very brave to take a leadership role. But tell me a little more. What did you study at the Ohio State University?
Well, I studied a lot of things. I kept adding to my major. I never changed my major, but I kept adding to it. So I was an economics major, and then I added international studies, and I took a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of Chinese, a little bit of Japanese, and even a little bit of Russian when I
Wow.
was in college. And then I added a business minor because I thought later I might want to go to business school. And indeed, I later got a master's in business administration while I was working at the Ohio Company and Bank One. So I'm glad I got that business minor. I got a lot of my prerequisites out of the way while I was still in undergraduate school. So it was a great experience. And I kept staying longer and adding more things to my educational experience. But, at that point, the Army was paying me. My dad was paying me. When I graduated, I took a big hit in my quality of life and my income, because the Army stipend went away. My dad quit sending me money, and I had to go off and earn a living. Maybe that's why it took me so long to graduate.
Yeah, you're really smart. You're living the life. That's
It was
amazing.
great.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, you do. You have a lot. You've tacked on a lot, but my gosh, what a wealth of knowledge you are and the experiences that you've had. So explain to the audience what all you came out of college after the 6 years. You were military. How then did you go into your first job?
So right after I graduated, I went off to my officer basic course at Fort McClellan. I was a chemical officer at that time. I started out as an infantry officer, and they needed me to become a chemical officer because they didn't have one. And I said, okay, I originally went to officer candidate school to be a pilot, and my eyes failed the flight physical. And back then they weren't given waivers, so I wasn't really particular. And I said, okay, I'll be a chemical officer, and went to Fort McClellan in 1989. 3 weeks after I graduated college, came back from that, and then went. While I was in college, I worked as a page at the State House, and one of the guys I worked as a page for was a guy named Paul Pfeiffer, who was a state senator from Bucyrus, who ran for attorney general in 1990. So when I got out of my officer basic course, he was running for attorney general, and he said, hey, will you come work on my race? And I did. So I did that for about a year in 1990. And that race was really close, but he lost. He later became a Supreme Court justice. And today he's running the Ohio Judicial Conference.
Oh, wow.
Because he was a Supreme Court justice for a number of years. And so he's working with judges from all around the state and supporting the judges around the state with an organization. But after that race, I got a call from a friend that said, hey, will you come work for the Franklin County Republican Party? I did that for a couple of years. And then I had met somebody there whose husband worked at the Ohio Company. And she said, you should go talk to my husband and get into finance. And so I worked for the Ohio Company for about 4 years on their syndication desk. So new deals, both initial public offerings and bond deals. We would do all of it, work with all the big folks, Goldman Sachs and Lehman Brothers and everybody else in the securities industry, and try to put those deals together and take some of the risk, and then get our brokers to sell, those securities. It was a really interesting and fast-paced job, and they were the ones who encouraged me to get a master's in business administration. I did that at the Ohio State University at night. So I did that from 1995 and 1996, graduated in 96 with my MBA.
Wow.
And right before I graduated, I got a call from Bank One, and they asked if I'd come over and do some work over there. So I ended up working at Bank One for about 9 years, from 95 until 2003, almost 2004. So it was a great time to be there. It was a time of expansion. When I got there, the motto of Bank One was 10,000 people that care. And when I left in 2003, right before they merged with JP Morgan Chase, had almost 30,000 employees. So
oh my gosh,
that's giant company in 14 states, and a great experience. And I left there in 2003 to be appointed to the state Senate. While I was working at Bank One, I got a call from an old friend I had gotten to know when I was a page in the state Senate, and he was now the president of the Senate. His name was Doug White. He was from Adams County in Manchester, just a couple towns over from Ripley, and he'd known my family a long time. And he said, "Hey, there's an opening in the state Senate. You should really apply." And I said, "Well, I'm not sure, that would be smart, because there's all these state representatives and all these mayors and all these other people that are applying." And he said, "Steve, I'm the guy who makes the decision, and I'm asking you to apply." And I was like, "Well, okay, I'm not.
You've been called.
I'm slow, but not that slow." So I applied and was appointed to the Senate in 2003, and that was my first job, elected job in public service, and served about 270,000 constituents in Western Franklin County, from Dublin all the way down to Grove City, Upper Arlington, Hilliard, and parts of Columbus. So it was
that was 2003.
That was 03. Yeah.
Okay. So what I want to say something really quick. You were freezing a little bit there. So the people who are watching live, when he freezes, we could still hear you beautifully. So if you freeze, just keep listening, folks, because we can hear him. It's just you're back though. You're back.
Okay, but, good. I'm sorry I froze.
Oh no, that's okay. It happens. This is a live broadcast, but I could hear you beautifully. It's all good. I wanted to ask, when you were kind of had that calling to go work for a campaign, when you were stationed your first time, was that like a little bit of the first time you ever maybe even considered your future to be in politics, or were you just helping a guy out on his campaign?
Well, I had already kind of been a little involved in politics, because when the part I guess I left out is, when I was in high school, I helped my local state senator, a guy named Cooper Snyder, in his campaign. And so when I came to Ohio State, he offered me a job as a page. And so that whole 6 years while I was in college, I was working as a page and a constituent aide at the State House. So that really helped develop my interest in politics even more. I'd helped out his campaign. In high school, I was a finalist for some government program or government testing to be like one of the top folks in the state. So that kind of drew me to politics. And then I helped out on Cooper Snyder's campaign. Then I worked in the Senate as a page and a constituent aide. And I think I really did at that point understand you could make a difference for people. So the district that Cooper Snyder represented was a very poor district. And I remember getting a call one day from a family whose kids had to wade across the creek every day to go to the school bus. And they were on one township, which is here, and there's another township right next to them. That's where the road was. And the township over here was willing to pay for a bridge across the creek, but they weren't allowed to under state law. And so Cooper Snyder passed a bill that allowed that township, the more wealthy township, to pay for that bridge. And those kids didn't have to wade across a creek every day to go to school.
Aww.
It's stories like that showed me that you can really make a difference for individual people in politics, not just some agenda or some philosophy, but you can make a difference for people. And that's what really drew me to politics. And so I worked for Paul Piper's campaign, always knowing that someday I might be interested in politics myself. But when
That's
Doug White
interesting.
called,
Yeah.
I didn't think I was quite ready, but he said, now's the time. And so I applied. And in 2003, and January 5th, I was sworn into the state Senate almost 19 years to the day after I'd been a page there. So it was kind of cool.
That is cool. So what did you learn in that role? And did that then you thought, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to stick in this. When did you decide you wanted to be state representative?
So I really hadn't thought I'd want to be a state senator or a member of Congress. And I never really thought I would want to leave Columbus and the state Senate to run for Congress in Washington. But what happened was a sort of a whole bunch of things. And, I watched where it looked like there wasn't going to be a Republican that had a real shot to win that was going to run for Congress in 2008. So I decided to run because I felt like the voters deserved a choice. It wasn't really like I wanted to go to Washington, but I felt like they deserved a choice to have somebody who's a conservative, not just a liberal that looked like she was going to win, Mary Jo Kilroy. And she ultimately won that race in 2008 against me by 2,311 votes. I was ahead
Not
on
that you
election night,
remember.
and then when the provisionals were counted, she won slightly.
Yeah.
And so for 2 years, I was out on my own doing some business consulting, but it was, and again, I didn't think I'd run again, but I finally decided, if you don't show people that you've got persistence and are willing to really fight for something, then shame on you. So I decided to run for Congress again in 2010. And as hard as it was in 2008, it was almost that easy in 2010. I was ahead from the day I filed against Mary Jo Kilroy, and I won that race by 15 points, even though I'd lost the other race by 0.7 of a point. And she was an incumbent the second time, and I still won really big because a lot of people really stuck with me and believed in me, and I will never forget that. It's that's something that I'm humbled by, is how many people supported me and continued to support me even after I lost, and she was the incumbent congresswoman, and so many people stuck with me and continued to support me with their time and their money and helped me win that race. And we won Congress back that year, and it was a great year to be sworn in with 77 other freshmen. Just an incredible time and an amazing opportunity to make a difference. And I did that for 11 years, and it was every day I was in awe of the opportunity I had to help people.
And you do, Steve. Anyone that knows, we see it. But I think Andrew Moore, I believe, was saying absolutely based on your comment about knowing that you can make a positive difference in politics. I think he was saying absolutely to that. And then Ori Spado's watching with us tonight. Ori, how are you doing? That's awesome. Persistence and loyalty are the keys. And of course, always respect. And yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Those are all true. And, that's the other thing that I learned from the military is respect is important. And that's one of the reasons that Joyce Beatty and I founded the Civility and Respect Caucus, because even though she was a Democrat, I was a Republican, we didn't agree on every issue. We respected each other, and we were able to serve our community much better by working together. And we tried to serve as an example. And by the time I left Congress, over 3 years, we had almost 50 people that had been members of the Civility and Respect Caucus, and they had to join together, one Republican, one Democrat. They couldn't just join by themselves. But respect is just as important as persistence and hard work.
And Ori also says the military is the best. Thank you for your service. Ori also was in the Army.
Thanks for your service, Ori.
Yeah. I really want to get into what year you left Congress, and was it 2020?
21. So
21.
it's been about 17 months. I left in May of 2021 to come run the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. And, I kind of felt like they called me. I wasn't really looking for a job, but the more I thought about it, I now have a 10-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter. At that point, they were 9 and 12, and that it was a good time to come home and make sure that I'm here with my kids and my wife and able to spend more time with the family. And I was kind of living a life where I was only with my kids 2 or 3 days a week, and then I was in Washington 3 or 4 days a week, and that was hard on the family. And frankly, kids need both parents if they've got them. And I decided it was time for me to come back and do that and get a chance to make a difference in a different way. And that's what I'm doing at the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. It's been really fun to grow the chamber. When I got there, we were $4.5 million of revenues. Now we're at the end of this year, looks like we'll be about $6.6 million of revenue. And next year, we're projected to be $8.5 million of revenue. So in 2.5 years, we'll be almost twice the revenues, which is amazing.
That does not surprise me with you leading. That's great. And I know you set goals for yourself and you're determined and you want to make a difference in a positive way. And you are again. So thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit about your vision and your view of politics from then till now, because, politics, leaves a sour taste in people's mouths, especially these days. And what advice and what information can you give us to help us feel better about it? Or what do you think?
Well, I'm still an optimist, and I still feel really good about both my time in politics and what I was able to do to make a difference for people, and that there are good people on both sides of the aisle trying to make a difference. Doesn't mean I agree with them. I don't always agree with the Republican. I don't always agree with the Democrat. But I think there's a lot of good people trying to make a difference. They're there for the right reason. So, when I left in May of 21, one of the headlines that I thought was the funniest was they said, "Nice guys don't finish last. They get a job with the Chamber of Commerce." But I left politics still a true believer that you can make a difference if you care about people. And I think there's people in both parties that are doing that every day, that are trying to do the right thing. I may not agree with their philosophy or what they want to do, but I know they're doing it for the right reasons and trying to do what they think is right. And that's all we can ask for in a country like America, a republic where we won't always agree, but we have people hopefully getting up every day trying to make the country and people's lives better.
That is wonderfully said. I couldn't agree with you more. It's okay to disagree. In fact, I encourage it. That's what makes us better. But we have to get to a place where we can disagree in in a better way. And so everything that you said, this is going to be a clip, by the way. This is one of my favorite parts, what you said. We need more of that. It doesn't matter, like Republicans and Democrats, we need to just, for the betterment of our country and for the betterment of ourselves, like, get along.
Yeah. I served overseas in Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2004 and 2005 as a battalion commander. And there's always a risk when you are leading troops in a combat zone that they will hate the enemy so much that they will do things that they shouldn't do, that are against the Geneva Convention. When I was in Iraq, there were military police at the Aubreigh prison that very wrongly abused prisoners at the Aubreigh prison. And as a general officer now in the Army, as a former commander and battalion commander and company commander, it's always hard to help your troops understand they've got to do their job, but they don't have to hate the people. They might have to take someone's life. They might have to shoot someone, but they shouldn't have so much hate that they're going to do really heinous things afterwards. And that's a really hard line to walk. And that's why a lot of soldiers have post-traumatic stress and they have mental health conditions, because it is hard to walk that line. But we're all seeing that line in politics too. And, it's not that dissimilar where, you might want to defeat somebody's idea or, elect your candidate and defeat the other candidate. But the hate in politics is just as dangerous as the hatred in warfare. And I think we need to make sure that we inform people that you don't have to hate somebody. You can disagree with them. You can work hard to not elect them or elect somebody else you do believe in, but hate and hatred are have no place in politics or war.
I agree. And so I've read several different articles, and one of them was after you left Congress and came back to Ohio full time to be at the chamber. But I just always am like, yes, this is why I like him, because you always state things with the most class, dignity. It's like what you just said. I mean, have you had, and don't, I mean, I know I'm not asking for any names or anything, but have you ever given people in Congress, advice about, I mean, because how do you get in the thralls of everything and be able to maintain that composure and not have that hate? How,
It's
when you're always put on defense all the time, how do you handle it? And have you given advice to others?
Well, I one of the things I learned when I was very young is it's important to be able to control your emotions. Toddlers can't control their emotions, but as we become young adults and adults, and we need to be able to control our emotions. It's one of the regulation things that are most important in society. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who haven't learned that. And things like social media almost undo that that training that we all learned to control our emotions in middle school and high school. And now people go on rants in social media and say things that they would never say to somebody's face. I think social
Yeah.
media is part of the problem with civility in this country is, the anonymity that you have on social media allows you to say and do things that you would never say and do to somebody's face. I'll go back to my upbringing in that small town of Ripley, Ohio, 2,500 people. You don't, say really rude things to somebody in a town that big because you might need them, in a very short time frame because there's only so many people around. Your house may be burning down or something may be happening. And so you learn in a small town, you've got to treat everybody with respect. And I think that is something that I learned and found in Ripley, Ohio, but took with me my entire life. And it's something I've lived and believe in strongly.
Mm. Yes. Amen to that. Like really. And honestly, what you said matters about, being in a small town and, relying on other people. But even in big cities, let's just say, I mean, we've gotten so far away from love thy neighbor that I don't
Yeah,
even know what's up half the time, and I agree with social media. It can be really good to promote something and
it can.
to brand something. But I also certainly never use a platform to belittle someone else or to do rants. I just refuse to do that. And I agree. It probably does, like, something's healing and then you read something and it scratches that scab off and it bleeds again. And it's just like, oh, enough already. Let's just, sometimes we got to agree to disagree, but let's move on here.
Right.
So I love that. But so as far as, so the question that I asked you was, you still believe in the country, the politics and all of that. You're an optimist and you know that we're going to pull together eventually. I mean, where do you see this going? I mean, in your opinion?
Well, there may have to be some events that pull us together. I mean, I remember after 9/11 how the country pulled together. I hope it doesn't take an event like that to pull us together again, but
Uh,
we are more divided than we've been in a very, very long time. And I am hopeful that we have a figure that will unite the country. I tell the joke that'll offend everybody here, that if you think of Joe Biden as Jimmy Carter, which I kind of do, uh, that makes Trump Nixon, and that just means all we're waiting on is Ronald Reagan, and I'm excited that Ronald Reagan might be coming soon.
I hope so too.
So now I've offended Republicans and Democrats
Yeah, so you know
with
what? If
that
you're gonna
analogy, but it's
offend
okay.
somebody, just get it all out, offend
That's
us
right.
all. So we're all good now. That's funny. Oh my goodness. Well, I've enjoyed this so much, and we have a few more minutes, but I would love to hear, the show's called Find It. So we're all finding something. We have found things, some things we're still seeking. But in your life, if you could give us a story or a quote or something you believe in that you have found in your life that serves you so well that you would like to let the public know, what would that be?
I think what I've found is that when you give, I've lived a life of service in the military, a life of service in the state Senate and in Congress, and now I consider it service to our state at the Chamber of Commerce. But when you give back to your community or your fellow man or give it through public service, you get enriched through that as well. And you get so much more than you could get just, working in the private sector trying to get rich. I've worked in the private sector too, and that's great. But I really do believe a life of service is a life that makes a bigger difference for more people and can help a lot of folks. And so I believe I've intentionally lived a life of service, and it's something that I started in Ripley, Ohio, continued through the military, continued through my time in the state Senate and my time in Congress, and I'm trying to continue to serve the state of Ohio through the Chamber of Commerce and grow our economy and make sure everybody can live their economic dream in Ohio, and that the places that are growing fast like Columbus continue to grow, but that we allow places in the rural areas and the Northeast that have been shrinking or Northwest to start to grow again. We've got to grow Ohio everywhere and help people live their dream wherever they choose to live throughout Ohio. And Ohio's got incredible natural amenities, and you can find, we don't have oceans, but if you are sitting on the shore of Lake Erie, you wouldn't know it. You can find it here.
True
We don't have
statement.
mountains, but if you're in the Hocking Hills, you wouldn't know it. You can find it here. So there's so
beautiful.
much you can find in Ohio.
You can find it
That's
in
right.
Ohio.
Find it here.
I want Bob Donnell, but I want to go to something. Do you ever feel, I want to ask you this question, Bob Donnell, but do you think you'll ever get back in politics?
I never say never, but I probably won't. When my kids are grown, if there's something going on and I feel like, other people can't do it, I may, but I intentionally, didn't stay in Congress for a long time, didn't stay in the state Senate for a long time. I served 6 years in the state Senate. I served 11 in Congress. And I felt like after that time, even though I didn't get everything done I wanted to do, you got to let somebody else do it. Mike Carey's doing a great job. He's a great congressman. He's going to get a lot of stuff done. And it's important to let the next folks, try and be in politics too. So I may never get back in, but if there was an opportunity and I didn't think there was the right people, running, I may run someday, but it's going to be years away because my 10-year-old is only in 4th grade. I got a long time. We got to get him, to college and, make sure we get him through college.
Yeah. Those years go so quickly. And I admire you for wanting to be there. And it does take a team, to raise the kids and all like that. And you had that when you grew up. So I understand why you're doing that. But Ori Spado just said, we need people like you in politics. Yeah, I was hoping you were going to say, I'm going to be the next Ronald Reagan. I'd say, I'd vote for you. Yeah, run for president. You got my support. I wanted to say you're a man of your word. You say you're going to do something and you do it. And this was when you got us, the Keys to Success team, a meeting with the Mike DeWine, the governor. And you can't really see us very well. We're on either end. But you see DeWine in the middle and Gary Von Kennel and Greg Phillips and Steve Stivers. And you're I think it's DeWine's assistant there.
It is. It's funny.
Yeah. So you got us that meeting and we went to Columbus and we had the meeting with you and with DeWine, and that was incredible. So thank you again for that. I think we met in 2015. So I've known you that long and I've never been disappointed. So, I see another picture Lynn must have found. Oh yeah.
And that's right where I am today in my,
same spot, same spot. Okay.
My wife last Christmas got me the Major General flag, the American flag and the Major General flag. So it's a great place to do videos.
It's perfect. Okay. Bob Donnell says, do you believe that there are any benefits to a divided country?
Well, I don't know that there are benefits, but it's who we are, and we shouldn't try to artificially unite. I mean, the one thing I will say, there are sometimes benefits to a divided Congress. So Republicans took the House, Democrats look like they're going to hold the Senate. Will hold the Senate even if Herschel Walker wins the runoff in Georgia. And the benefit of a divided Congress is no bad things happen. You know, if they come together, they're going to come together on something that everybody agrees on. And, you know, all the hard left and hard right things just don't happen. So you get some certainty for a little while. So the benefit of divided government is certainty, but you need to understand it's certainty of the status quo. You're not going to change anything very quickly. And that's a little frustrating when you're in Congress, because most people don't go there to just sit around. They want to do something. And so
Right.
one of the reasons that, you know, I realized it was probably time to leave is I expected, you know, that with the other party controlling Congress, and then I did assume that Republicans would take the House in 2022. Didn't know if we'd take the Senate, but even if we took the Senate, Joe Biden's president, and I just didn't think they were going to come together to get a lot done. And, you know, I figured I could come home and get more done, because you can still get stuff done in the state Senate and state House. There's great leadership here in Ohio, the governor and everybody. So it's an exciting time to be home. But I'm still optimistic, and I'm hopeful that
Sure.
folks can come together. I'm not sure there's,
Yeah.
you know, benefits to a divided country, but I can say that our members of Congress represent their own districts really well. So to the extent we have a divided Congress, it's because we have a divided country, and there's people that disagree on a lot of issues, and, you know, they get it based on what they believe and where they're from. And that's, I think people represent their districts really well. And we just do have a divided country right now. And at some point, hopefully there'll be something that can unite us. But we shouldn't just give up on the things we believe and unite for the sake of unity. We need to actually agree on something before we unite.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's a great point that you're making for sure. Before we leave, I want you to know how much I appreciate your time. And before we leave, do you have any parting words that you'd like to leave our listeners with this evening?
Well, I was doing math with my daughter this morning at 5 a.m. because her homework, she'd only gotten 2 of 10 right, and she wanted to get a better score. So we looked at it and worked at it a couple times, and she finally got 9 out of 10 right this morning. And the words I left her with were Winston Churchill's words, and she likes them. And I think it's true for everybody. Never give up, never surrender. I think that is, no matter where you are in life, no matter what you're doing, no matter how bad things are, things can get better if you stick at it. And you have to have a plan. You have to be smart, but never give up and never surrender. And then nobody can ever defeat you if you don't surrender. You only lose when you give up.
Oh, yes. Amen. That is amazing. And with that, guys, there's nothing more to say. Stay tuned for the outro. Steve, stick around in the back room before so we can talk before you
All
leave.
right.
See you again, everyone, next week, Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Have a great night, y'all. Never give up. Never surrender.
That floats around me, keeping me safe and sound.